We are on to the Phoenix Suns, which they are my team. Yes, they are my team. They acquired Landry Shamet for Javon Carter, the number 29 pick, which was Day'Ron Sharp, who's now on the Nets. They signed Chris Paul to a 4-year, $120 million deal, which was the pinnacle of agent-friendly reporting. $75 million of that $120 million deal is guaranteed. He gets paid $30.8 million next season, 28.4 million this in year 2. 15.8 million of his $30.8 million salary is guaranteed in year 3, and then his $30 million salary in year 4 is fully non-guaranteed. They signed Cameron Payne to a 3-year, $19 million deal. Only 14.5 million is guaranteed. That final season is fully non-guaranteed for him. They re-signed Abdel Nader to a 2-year, $4.2 million deal with a team option on that second season. They signed JaVale McGee to a 1-year, $5 million deal. They signed Elfrid Payton and Frank Kaminsky to minimum 1-year contracts. And they scooped up Chandler Hutchinson on a 2-way contract. Spoiler alert, Chandler Hutchinson is not on the Spurs. Notable subtractions include Javon Carter, Etuan Moore, Torrey Craig, Langston Galloway, who remains unsigned, and they waived Tyshawn Alexander. I'm very curious to know which grade you gave the Phoenix Suns because you're smirking right now. So I need to know it.
It's an A minus. I was only smirking because I was trying to remember why I didn't give it an A. And that's just because I left the little TBD section depending on what Ayton and Bridges get in their extensions, presuming that they both get them.
By the way,
yeah,
if Aaron Gordon got 4.88, the number that was being thrown around for Mikal Bridges towards the end of last year was like 4.80. Is he signing for anything under like 4.102 at this point?
No, yeah, he's got to go in saying, "Give me 100." It's got to be 100 because that's just I totally agree. And Ayton, I don't know what you do with that because he's going to go in and say, "I'm the number 1 overall pick, and I was just a big deal, a starter that really mattered that you needed on a team that made the finals. So let's start at the max, and you have to talk me down." That's going to be tough. But yeah, I mean, the Chris Paul deal, it's so good. It's so good for the team. Like I'm totally fine front loading it like that and just protecting yourself like crazy on the back end. I like to me, it's really hard to sign a bad 2-year deal, which for a very good player, which is sort of what this is. I mean, it's, the third year is a decent amount of money guaranteed, but I mean, that's about as good as you could have come out of that. And then smaller scale, the campaign deal, it might even be better. Because I think he could start for a lot of teams. I think he matters a ton for them. He was so good for them. And like, if your concern is, which it should be, that Paul's going to break down, I'm fine with campaign starting, 35 games. Like, I'm totally good with that. So for, basically $6.5 million a year, and not even all of it's guaranteed. Man, I like that. Even the smaller scale stuff, I think JaVale McGee addresses a real need, especially with Dario Saric going to miss a bunch of time because backup center really sucked. Like, you just can't. They brought Kaminsky back, but like, you can't trust him as a rotation guy if Ayton misses time or just doesn't play 48 minutes. Everything else looks fine to me. Even it's hard to be a bad minimum contract. I think Elfrid Payton is going to test that theory, but it's a minimum so that's fine. I just don't really have any criticism. I guess you could talk me up to an A if we just say like we shouldn't really care about what happens with the extensions for Ayton and Bridges, because otherwise the Suns, I think, just nailed all the big stuff. So I don't really have any criticisms of what they did.
That's great because I have plenty. I gave them a B minus. I don't think there's anything wrong with their offseason. It was a lot of maintenance, and all their talent retention deals I loved. The Chris Paul contract for the team, absolutely fantastic. The campaign deal, fantastic. Even the Nader deal, like, just he was out for 2 months or whatever it was, came back in the playoffs and was defending his ass off. That's a great flexible option. I don't have a problem with the JaVale McGee addition. I expected something more inventive from this team for a few reasons. They had easy access to the full mid-level, which they did not use its entirety. They gave a little bit more than half to JaVale McGee. And then you also mentioned it, like, what if Chris Paul breaks down? You have Cameron Payne, that's awesome. And there's also the Devin Booker, a point guard route, which Monty Williams doesn't necessarily seem in love with. And maybe it's a Mikal Bridges is going to handle the ball more because he does have pretty good vision. Even Landry Shamet in the past has shown some ball handling flash, but that's like Landry Shamet's career arc has just been so wild. When you look at how much he's been moved the teammates he's had, all these future Hall of Famers that he's played with, there's I wouldn't call it a risk, but it's just like I don't know how much he's actually going to elevate them. I just expected, unless they think that Jalen Smith is going to pop, and he did have some really nice moments in summer league. I wanted to see them be more inventive in the front court, and I could even you could say, well, losing Torrey Craig is kind of a big deal because he was playing important minutes for them in the postseason. I just think with Bridges, Cameron Johnson, Nader, Crowder, you're fine there. Ultimately, Devin Booker factors into the wing rotation too, so that doesn't really skeeve me. But like, I, I think you without Dario Saric, who was kind of on the maybe he was banged up before he was actually tore his ACL, but like the Dario Saric at the 5 minutes weren't as impactful as they were for the first half or 3/4, 2/3 of the season, whatever. I They needed to do something more than get a JaVale McGee in the front court for me. Why weren't they a team that was more in on the Larry Nance Jr. deal? And I get that after trading for Landry Shamet, the equity probably wasn't there, like having whoever you drafted at number 29 plus a future pick or maybe number 29 and Jalen Smith would have looked a lot better for Larry Nance than, oh, Jalen Smith and Landry Shamet. When you can re-aggregate Landry Shamet, I don't know if that date passed already. So I'm I expected more, and then to not even use your full mid level when there were players out there, and I guess they could technically still spend it, but like there were upgrades or at least depth pieces to be had, and you're not going to be a team that's paying through the teeth this year, even with that front loaded Chris Paul contract. You just made the finals. The Western Conference is wide open. Jamal Murray isn't going to return from his torn ACL probably until I would guess sometime in 2022. I know a lot of people think he's just going to come back because he has that maniacal work ethic. It wouldn't shock me if he's out basically until the playoffs, if not all season. Kawhi isn't going to play next year. You saw that version of the Western Conference landscape. The Lakers are stepping out on a limb, and they're trying to hold Russell Westbrook's pile of bricks while they're out on that limb. You looked at that Western Conference landscape and didn't kind of think to be more aggressive. And I guess they still have some flexibility if they want to make moves towards the trade deadline. And it'd be better, or you could, in theory, get more value for Jalen Smith if he's actually playing for you and boost his value from the net zero, net negative that it was through last season. I get all that. And I also, you have to look, if you're asking me for an alternative, like what did you want them to do? I could look at it as I might have been more intrigued by a Jarrett Vanderbilt on this team than a JaVale McGee. And so just something where it was either a bigger swing or you were more aggressive to upgrade the roster or just to get a little bit more depth, because it feels like they enjoyed, for the most part, really good health last year. And they're not inoculated against any one disaster. I'm not saying any team should be, but like you're so dependent offensively on Chris Paul and Devin Booker to me. I do think Mikal Bridges has another level. They won the minutes Cameron Payne played without both Booker and Chris Paul last season. That's big. Chris Paul's getting up there in age. I would have, if you're going to get rid of Torrey Craig, and even though you're bringing back Abdel Nader, I might have liked to have seen him get another lowish end to mid-end type wing in there. And then the front court depth, they do have it in theory because Jalen Smith in a pinch can play backup five. You have Ayton, you have JaVale McGee, you have Frank Kaminsky. I would have liked to have seen something more inventive or aggressive there. And you're not even going to talk me into Elfrid Payton, not even at the minimum, not even as your third point guard. No. So not a bad offseason, totally justifiable. And if you ask me to pick right now, I might pick Phoenix to come out of the West again. It really hinges on the Chris Paul availability for me. I think I lean towards Phoenix as my pick to come out of the West right now. So this is me admitting that, and they were my title pick last year, so I was wrong there. Still, I just can't shake this feeling that it wasn't uninspiring. It lacked some flair or a level of aggression that I think they needed to show.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just think like I sort of look at it as when you're that good and you've got that much money, that needs to be spent to stay that way by bringing back key guys. It's just hard to get better. I take your point though. They could have certainly been more creative with their, because now they sort of, if Ayton doesn't play, they don't really have another look. Like Saric, isn't perfect, but he gave them another kind of form to take, just by being an undersized five. So yeah, could have got more creative. I don't know what the options are necessarily there.
I'm also do
Um,
you view Landry Shamet as more than a rental for them? Because you're getting to the point where you already have to pay Bridges and Ayton next season, which is why if you want to defend how they allocated their money this year, you can because they're about if they're keeping Paul, Booker, Bridges, and Ayton, which there's no reason to assume that they're not, they're going to pay through
they
the teeth
should.
for that core.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like to
No,
give up those
I
two cost controlled assets for Landry Shamet, who kind of feels like a rental, unless you think he's going to get, you know, like is he'll get more than 5 million a year, unless I guess he could have a terrible season, but I don't know.
yeah, I think Shamit. I mean, I don't even know how much he's going to play, honestly. You said his career arc has been like wild. I think his career arc is just angled down, basically. Like his best year was his rookie year, I think, if memory serves. But yeah, I don't know.